Well, hey everyone, we are in the final week of our series that we've been talking about this concept of family called Stuck Together. And we've been talking a lot about family, and we've defined family as the people that you're with, the people that you're with. And over the last few weeks, we've kind of talked about the families that you're born into, the families that you live with, or the families that you spend a lot of time with. And this week, I want to talk to you about the families that we choose. Now, for example, I can remember growing up and I was watching a lot of television, and every Saturday morning I faithfully tuned in and watched a show called Saved by the Bell. And what I loved about this show was just how amazing it was, the stories that they told, the kind of tension that they created and always resolved. But part of what I really enjoyed about this show was that the parents were very rarely included in the show. In fact, very rarely did you see a parental figure. Usually it was the teenagers trying to figure things out for themselves. And it was always this great thing that as I watched this show, and even when the kids would get in trouble at school or something would happen in life, you would rarely see their parents. And I always thought to myself, wow, that would be such a great experience. Because for me, there would be these great things about, having extra freedom or being able to do whatever I wanted, or just, kind of the lack of responsibility. And it was great. And it's fun to dream about, adding a movie character or adding a celebrity to our family. But unfortunately, that's really not realistic for many of us. In fact, it doesn't mean that, we can't do those things, but really we don't have a say in who we consider to be our family. So let me ask you this. How many of you would say you have a best friend? Now, this is the kind of friend who knows you better than anybody. This is the kind of friend that when you FaceTime or when you text, you know that they will answer. They're the type of friend that, you want to hang out with all the time. And so what I invite you to do is just real quick, just make a list of some of the characteristics of your best friend that you really admire about them. Maybe it could be, how funny they are, how, great their house is, or, how they make you feel when you're with them, or whatever it is, but just write down a few of those things in these next few moments. Now, as you read through that list, a friend like that, sometimes they tend to feel more like family than they do a friend. And while family is a really important thing to talk about, I know that for some of you, this whole series may feel just a little bit off. Maybe, you've been here over the last weeks, or you've been watching over the last few weeks, and you've thought about, well, my family situation is really different. It isn't like, kind of what we're thinking. And so for some of you, you don't have the kind of family that everyone else has. You don't have the kind of family that everyone else has. Maybe that's the way you feel. Maybe, you say, well, my dad's a mess, or I'm not allowed to see him, or my mom left, or I have no idea where she is. Or maybe you say, well, I'm adopted, and that's awesome, but it makes you feel like your family is a little bit different than other people's families. Or maybe, you go through something else. Maybe it's a foster family. Maybe it's, you're living with aunts and uncles and grandparents and whoever. So for some of you, you may say, well, this whole family talk, concept is really a struggle because I don't feel like I have the family that everybody else has. Or maybe for some of you, you say, well, I'm struggling with this whole concept because the family I have isn't the family that I want. The family that I have isn't the family that I want. Maybe you say, well, I wish my mom or dad didn't work all the time, or I wish my dad would care a little bit more about what's going on in my life, or maybe, I wish I had siblings, or, if you do have siblings, maybe you wish they were nicer. But whatever it is you see the families in your neighborhood, or you go to your friends' houses and you wish your family was more like their family. Or maybe your family's dealing with some secrets that other people don't know about. Things like addiction or abuse or cheating or divorce. And that kind of stuff is hard to deal with, and it's hard to talk about. It's the kind of stuff that you really wish wasn't happening in your family. Or maybe you struggle when we talk about this whole concept of family because you say, well, I don't have one. Maybe you say you don't have one. And sure, you can say you're from a family of some kind, but for whatever reason, you're not with them anymore. And even though you may have adults in your life who care about you, you still struggle with this concept of family because, you struggle about the family that you came from. And it's not the family that you thought you'd one day have. Maybe you're hearing this, and you can't really relate because you love the family that you're stuck with. You're very happy with the family. And if that's you, I am so thrilled and I'm excited that you feel that way about your family. But stick with me over the next few minutes as we go through this, because even though you may not be navigating the difficult things in your family, the reality is you have friends who probably are. And so today is a great opportunity for you to discover how to be a good friend by learning more about their experience. You see, the truth is, for so many of us, family doesn't look the way we thought it would look. Family doesn't look the way we thought it would look. For whatever reason, the kind of family we got stuck together with isn't the kind of family we want. The kind of family that we got stuck together with is not the kind of family that we want. And if you're feeling this way about your family situation right now, let me just stop and encourage you with this. You're not the only one. You're not the only one. In fact, it's a feeling that a lot of us have felt about our families, not just today, but even thousands of years ago. Because in the Bible, there's a story about these two guys who were dealing with complicated family situations that I think can help us kind of unpack what we're going to talk about throughout the remainder of our time together. You see, these two guys were named David and Jonathan, and neither of them had typical home lives. David didn't actually live with his family. He left when he was called to work for Saul, who was the king of Israel, who happened to be Jonathan's dad. And so they lived and they worked together in the same house, and Jonathan and David, they became really close friends. Now, at first, this was no big deal because Saul was Jonathan's dad, and he loved David. He appreciated all that David was doing for their family. And over time, though, the feelings began to change. Because as king, Saul wanted to be seen as the greatest, the most powerful, the most beloved leader in all of Israel. But David's popularity, it started to increase. And as that started to happen, Saul became a little bit jealous. Not only that, to make matters worse, God had actually chosen David to be the next king, which was a plan that Saul absolutely didn't love. And as a result, Saul began to hate David. And I mean, not just oh, I hate you, legitimately hate him to the point that he plotted to kill David. And so to save himself, David had to flee where he was living at the time with Saul and Jonathan. And he had to go into hiding, and he barely avoided being murdered by Saul a few times. Now, see what I mean? This is an example of family situations that David nor Jonathan really wanted or expected. And David lived apart from his family. Jonathan was dealing with a dad who was trying to murder his best friend. I mean, that might be enough to leave both guys feeling completely and totally alone. But still, these guys formed a friendship that was more like a brotherhood. They were the kind of friends who helped each other out, who stuck with each other. No matter what, they protected each other. They were the kind of friends who weren't really friends because they were more like family. And I mean, when Saul, Jonathan's father, was trying to kill David, his best friend, look at what Jonathan did. In 1 Samuel chapter 23, it says, Jonathan went to find David and encouraged him to stay strong in his faith in God. Jonathan went to find David and encouraged him to stay strong in his faith in God. This is more than being friends. This is being family. When the families they were born into didn't give them what they needed, they turned to each other. They found strength and encouragement and faith in the family that they chose to be a part of. A writer in the Bible describes this friendship like this in 1 Samuel chapter 18. It says, and Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. Now, I love the story of Jonathan and David for a lot of reasons. But the main one is this, is I think it shows us that sometimes friends are more like family. Sometimes friends are more like family. And like we said, not all families look the same. Sometimes, for Jonathan and David, you find yourself in a situation where other people feel more like your family than the people that you're actually related to. Now, I can remember, there's a friend of mine, his name is Brian, and Brian and I met in college, and it was this great and like instantaneous friendship, but Brian and I have stayed in contact over the years and we've become best friends. We got a really strong bond to one another. In fact, he was the best man in our wedding. I was the best man in his wedding. It's this really just strong, deeper, deeper than friendship relationship that we're really good friends to the point that we would say we're family. We've been there through a lot of trauma, through a lot of suffering, through a lot of difficult things. We've celebrated with each other. We've cried with each other. But ultimately, we've become like a family. And Brian's family is part of my family. And my family is part of his family. And you see, sometimes God puts people in our lives to act like family. Your friends, maybe they're friends or parents or a coach or a teacher or a small group leader or even other members of a small group. Maybe you don't realize that's part of the reason that here at our youth groups, what we do is we have small groups. And the reason is because we want you to know you're part of the family of God. This means that you're supported and that you're encouraged. That's what God calls us to do. God created us to do life with each other, to do life like a family. And even when he was on earth, Jesus had people who became like his family. His disciples, the men that he traveled with and spent a lot of time with, they were his closest friends and followers. They were people that did everything with Jesus. And they weren't just as close as friends, they were as close as family. And because they were believers in Jesus, they became a part of the family of God. And that's the same thing that God offers you and the same thing that God offers me. Is whether this is the first time you've watched one of these videos or, tuned in, or whether you've been on here every single week, our hope is that when you show up, you feel like you're a part of a family. You see, at Identity, we have people who will support you, who will love you, who will encourage you. And maybe your family at home is awesome, and if so, that's great. Or maybe your family doesn't look like you hoped it would. But no matter what the situation is, this family that you're given, whether it's your actual family or whether it's a family that you've chosen to be a part in, they stick together with you as you walk through life. Because sometimes friends are more like family. Now, maybe you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, yes, I totally agree that. I know who loves me and who treats me like family. I know who makes up, my family that's outside of the family I was born into. And if that's you, that's great. And so one of the best things you can do this week for those individuals is you can let them know that you appreciate them. You can let them know that you appreciate them. You can thank them for making you feel like family, for being there and for supporting and encouraging you, and do the same for them. Or maybe you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, well, that all sounds great, and I wish I had those people in my life that I could lean into and trust and, would be a part of my life. But honestly, I don't know who they are or where I would even find them. And if that's you, then I would say this: invite more people into your family. Invite more people into your family. Think bigger than just the group of people that you're close to right now. Think about individuals that are speaking into your life. Maybe it's somebody older than you or somebody that's close to you that you can really trust. Maybe it's a teacher or a coach or a friend's parent or your small group leader. Maybe there are people in your small group that you can lean on and trust to be a part of your family. And so if that's you, I want you to choose one person could be like family and include them in parts of your lives. Choose one person that could be like family and include them in parts of your lives. Spend time with them. Ask them to hang out. Open up to them about what's going on in your life. And I promise it will be worth it. Because inviting people into your life will expand your family. And remember, sometimes friends are more like family. You see, one of the best parts about following Jesus is that we gain a family. The church, your small group, we can become like a second home, a place where you can feel safe, where you can be heard, where you can be known and you can be loved, because that's how God designed it to be. You see, when we're struggling with the family that we're born with or we live with, we can lean on the family that we get to choose. Because remember, sometimes friends are more like family. So as we wrap up our time together today, I want you to think about this question. Who is a friend in your life who's more like family? Who is a friend in your life who's more like family. Well, I want to thank you so much for tuning in and checking out this video as we wrap up our series called Stuck Together. Next week, we're going to begin a brand new series talking about the Bible and what we can learn from the Bible and kind of unpacking that. And so we invite you to join us either in person or through these videos. We'd love to see you face to face. We meet from 6 to 8 p.m. in the youth room at New Hope Church. We'd love to have you join us in person. If not, we understand. Keep checking out these videos and have a great and amazing rest of your week.